Live on WFLA Now. With a specialized degree in climate, Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Baradelli is pioneering the way we look at climate and extreme weather. Welcome to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by ArmorView Window and Door.
And in today's Climate Classroom, we are talking about a very serious topic that is happening right now. LA's most destructive fires in history are burning as we speak. There's two really large fires, the Palisades and the Eaton fire, and thousands of homes have been burned to the ground, and people's lives, unfortunately, are being changed forever. So in today's Climate Classroom, we're going to be talking about the science behind why the fires are so bad there. We'll be talking about the weather angles and also the climate angles as well. And to help us do that, I want to bring in my guest today. On the very right of the screen is Anthony Edwards. He's a meteorologist with the San Francisco Chronicle, someone who I've known for the past couple of years. And you cover this all the time, Anthony, which has been happening so much more, these huge fires in California. So I want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for having me. It's a busy time, but it's important to have these conversations as things are happening.
I'm glad you can be with us. And also, of course, our very own Val Simpson, who is here to help us today talk about what is going on in Southern California. And also, you're going to be taking viewer questions as well, right?
That's right. I'm going to be watching on our Facebook page any comments or questions that you guys might have for Jeff or for Anthony. And I will be helping you guys out, answering these questions with the situation that's happening in California.
And it is happening right now. In fact, what I want to do is bring up live pictures. These are live pictures. They are, I believe, near the Hollywood Hills and the Eaton fire. And I know it's hard to see anything right now, but this picture has been varying, from minute to minute of different pictures of LA, and that's a tower. A lot of these fires are burning right by the TV towers, from what I understand. And so periodically, we're going to get. You can see how half of the picture is just smoky, and then half of the picture is not. So we're going to get some live views of what it looks like. It really is a disastrous situation for the folks in Southern California right now. So, Anthony, I want to bring you in on this. So let's lay the groundwork. What are the weather reasons why this is taking place right now?
Sure, and let's keep in mind this is January, right? So to have wildfires happening in January to this scale is really just unheard of. And so we want to step back a second and talk about California's climate. Folks in Florida, where most of your viewers are here, are used to just kind of a pretty wet climate, right? You guys get 60 inches of rain each year. I don't know what the average amount of precipitation is in Tampa Bay every winter, but in California, really our precipitation comes in about a 6-month window from roughly October through March. And Southern California has not seen a lick of rain really this winter so far. Los Angeles International Airport since July 1st has picked up 4/100ths of an inch of rain. Yeah, you heard that right. That's less than 1/10 of an inch. Look at that right there. 3% of normal for parts of the LA basin. And it's just kind of disgusting considering that we should have probably already seen 5 or 6 inches so far. And so what happens during this time is we have storms that are kind of dropping toward, Nevada, Arizona, but they're coming from the north, so they don't really carry much precipitation with them. And as you see on this map here, since this is, I believe, October 1st, really only a few inches of rain for this region, and some basically none. And so these winds pick up as the storms kind of come from the east, and these are called Santa Ana winds. They go up and over the mountains, as you can see here, and they push really dry, warm air toward Pasadena, Los Angeles, Palm Springs area. And yeah, as you see on this graphic, gusts were up to 100 miles per hour in the San Gabriel Mountains. So if you've ever seen pictures from the Rose Bowl just last week, they were showing the views of the mountains up there with the sun setting. And those mountains climb thousands of feet just in the shadow of the Rose Bowl. And those strong winds come up and over, and they are just really dangerous. If any fires start, it's impossible to stop them.
Yeah, and it's really incredible. Looking at this a couple of days ago, I thought to myself, and I've covered these, Anthony, for when I worked at the network in New York, and I've seen a lot of these Santa Ana events, and I always looked at them and said, well, that looks pretty bad. This time I said, wow, that looks like it's going to be really bad. So we kind of had an idea of just how bad this was going to be. We were just hoping for no ignitions, right? And Val, that's an important part of this. Fires don't spontaneously pop up.
Right.
They get lit somehow. Anthony,
Right.
do we have any idea? Were these started by people? Was this arson? Do we have any idea yet how these fires got started?
Yeah, let's come back to that in 5 minutes. Someone just posted a story on our website about the cause. I'll
Okay.
check that out as we
Okay.
show
I
some
did
more,
make a note
photos.
though that I
So-
wanted to ask Anthony
Go ahead,
about.
yeah.
Anthony, you were saying how it was so unusual that this time of year California hadn't seen any rain. What is causing that? Does it have
Yeah.
something to do with the transition to La Nina from El Nino? What's happening?
Exactly, Val. Yeah, that's a good point. So what we've seen so far this winter is storm after storm going toward the Pacific Northwest and hitting Northern California. So in November, I actually covered a storm, a bomb cyclone, which is really just a rapidly intensifying low pressure system that moved toward Washington State and created some massive winds up there. In Northern California, that led to blizzard conditions up near Mount Shasta. And then in the North Bay, just 60 minutes or an hour north of San Francisco, this area got 20 inches of rain in 3 days. Santa Rosa, if you're familiar with wine country, and there was flooding everywhere.
Oh,
But
wow.
these storms are taking a southwest to northeast track and basically just skipping over Southern California. And this is typical during La Nina because in El Nino, which is somewhat synonymous of more precipitation in Southern California, we tend to have enhanced moisture transport from the Pacific Ocean down there. But in these situations, that subtropical jet stream is not quite as strong in La Nina years. So it's really hard to get the moisture down in Southern California. And yeah, you see on this map here, the La Nina was just declared this morning by NOAA. And so we've kind of entered that phase of there being probably more cool storms in the northwest, but drier storms in the desert southwest.
Yeah, I just made this map on the fly, so I would have added more annotation to kind of give people an idea. But you can see all that blue near the equator. So it's that blue strip that we had El Nino last year. Now we have La Nina, which you said just was declared today. But you can see all that blue water in the tropical Pacific there. That is below normal water temperatures, which translates usually to very dry conditions in Southern California, as you mentioned, and actually very wet conditions in the Pacific Northwest. And it's been interesting. I've been watching very closely because, and I was talking to Anthony about this, I'm going to be headed to Tahoe for a weather conference at the end of the month. And Northern California has been inundated with heavy rain so far this year. Southern California can't buy a drop. But it looks overall very dry across California, at least for the next 3 weeks, Anthony, right? I mean, I don't see any real break in this ridge. It's very cold in the east. We have this big trough of low pressure. But, everything's connected in weather. With the cold weather in the east, we have this big ridge of high pressure and very dry conditions in the west, right?
That's right. Yeah, this is a very amplified sort of weather pattern right now. And I was just looking this morning, we have some signs of a Rex block developing, which puts high pressure to the north over the Pacific Northwest, and then to the south you kind of have this low pressure, and they kind of feed back into each other, and this pattern is very stationary. And so probably see some continued periods of Santa Ana winds in Southern California at least next week, and it's going to be quite hard to get any sort of significant storms to come off the Pacific Ocean. Maybe if that low spins around enough, we'll get a few stray showers down there in Southern California, but it is not looking like anything that is going to put these fires out.
Well, that's unfortunate because it's not contained.
That's live, Val.
This is a live look
right now. That's live
now.
video. I mean, this is happening as we speak. These fires are not under control, right, Anthony? Do we have any level of control on? I imagine the Palisades would have some, but maybe not the Eaton fire.
Yeah, so 0% containment on the Eaton and Palisades fires, both of them 0%. And so containment line is if they can, get some retardant around the fire or just some lines, some fire breaks. But, the main goal right now is structure protection and saving lives. This was as of yesterday, already have lost 5 lives across these fires. That death toll could certainly rise. And so the firefighters are doing everything they can to protect homes. But oftentimes, with these trees that are just backing up straight into the homes, if a tree catches fire and drops some embers on the roof, then it's game over. So there's not much they can really do for some of these houses. So it's really important for these people. If you're seeing this and you live in an area that's wildfire prone, to trim the vegetation away from your house so that this doesn't happen to your home in the future.
These are the TV towers, I understand, probably right near the Hollywood Hills. Anthony, are you familiar with this area? I know you're in Northern California, but clearly there's a lot of TV towers here, and I'm not exactly sure where this is. I know it's on the border of the Eaton Fire. Seems to be on the very top of, I guess these can be considered the Hollywood Hills. Do you know?
Yeah. So there was a fire in Hollywood Hills last night, and the evacuations were lifted from that. That was the Sunset Fire. So good news there. But
so that's okay. So this is not the Hollywood
Eaton
Hills.
Fire is happening just north of Pasadena. So I think the Rose Bowl is maybe one of the more familiar landmarks around there. And Caltech is also in Pasadena. And if you go just north of there, there's the San Gabriel Mountains. The Eaton Fire was named for the Eaton Canyon, which is a popular hiking spot in the area. And so just climbing the mountain there, I believe it's I can get you an exact name, but
yeah, I mean,
Wilson
look,
Observatory.
clearly there's a lot of infrastructure. It's on top of a hill. That's where most of the TV towers would be, because you want your best line of sight that you can possibly have. So you put these TV towers really high up. Let me bring you guys back on camera to talk about this a little bit more. So let's talk about the longer term issues that we're dealing with in California. There's always this back and forth between people like, whoa, we need to rake the forest, right? But in reality, it's real. We need to, you mentioned trimming vegetation. There is a real benefit to making sure that we have as much forest management as we can. I think that's a little more possible in Northern California, where it's more forest fires. And in this case, these are more like, what do they call them? The intersection between the urban and
the wildland urban.
Interface. That it becomes a little more difficult there. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. So there was actually a study that I covered this October from out of UC Merced, and they determined that fires are moving much more rapidly in Southern California. Fast fires are becoming faster in Southern California than they are anywhere else in the U.S. And this is because of the Santa Ana winds that happen during the fall, when it's just been extremely dry all summer. So if we have hot, dry summers, and that hot period extends farther and farther into the October, November months, then you're setting the stage for these rapid fires. And there's people that live all over these hills.
Was that John Abatzoglu who did the study? Do you remember?
It's Crystal Colden, I believe, was one of the lead authors. Yes. I
have a graphic that John Abatzoglu made, and the reason why I'm saying, and when I've had him on my show before, and the reason why I'm mentioning his name is just because I really like saying Abatzoglu. I'm sure you probably are familiar with John.
Yes, we just were talking to him this morning.
I figured that. Okay. Well, this is not something that he made, but there will be a graphic that he did make that I want to show you. But first of all, so this is what we're dealing with here, folks. The climate has really changed in California, and I was discussing this with Val before. What's happening here is that it's warming up. And even though the moisture content of the atmosphere may be going up a little bit, relatively, the temperature's going up much faster than the amount of moisture that's going up. So we have this this moisture deficit, as I call it, and scientists have done studies on this. And the result of this moisture deficit, I want to bring you back on camera. The result of this moisture deficit is that it's drying out everything. So even though in a warming climate you do actually get more moisture in the atmosphere, the warmth is happening faster than the moistening of the atmosphere, and you're getting a larger gap in between the two. The relative humidity is going down. That's drying out the vegetation, and so it's causing these fires to spread much faster. Anthony, did I get that explanation fairly correct?
Yeah, Dr. Daniel Swain out of UCLA, he describes it as an expanding atmospheric sponge. I like to think about it as like a balloon. You get a birthday balloon at a grocery store, and then you walk outside on a cold day and it shrinks, right? But then you go back inside and it expands. So when you imagine there's a little bit of water in there. Actually, sometimes if you're blowing up the balloon from your mouth, you might see this as you go outdoors, this will condense, right? This water vapor will come and turn into liquid water droplets, but you go back inside and it turns into gas. So a larger atmosphere or a warmer atmosphere, the volume expands and it can hold more moisture. So that means evaporation increases. So then you're drying out the vegetation. Right. So the dry periods get drier and the wet periods get wetter, which causes this whiplash back and forth between, we just saw some record precipitation last winter, right. Very dry summer, everything grows and then becomes tinder and then it burns.
It's a good point that you made. So the idea is this: the atmosphere is demanding more moisture from the ground because the atmosphere is warmer. It's saying, oh, I need more moisture because I have a bigger sponge now. I need to soak up this moisture. It takes it from the ground. It dries out the vegetation. So let me bring up this graphic. So look at this graphic closely. These are the top 20 largest California wildfires. Look at the burned acreage from 1932 through 1999. It's only like 20% of the sliver of this whole pie graph.
Yeah.
The rest of it is from 2000 to 2019. And then more than half of it is from 2020 to 2021.
Wow.
Just to get, so that this is just the top 20 largest California wildfires, but you can see how much more acreage the largest fires are taking up and burning. Most of California's, it's something like 15 of California's largest fires have happened just in the past several years. Am I right about that, Anthony?
Yeah, let me add that this summer
it's hard
we had the Park Fire, which was in Northern California, just to the east, east of Chico, northeast of Chico. So if you ever gone up to Tahoe, it's kind of to the northwest of there near Mount Lassen National Park, and this burned more than 400,000 acres. At some points, it was burning 100,000 acres every single day.
Wow!
And so that was just an enormous fire, and ended up as the fourth largest in recorded history in the state of California.
Can I ask a question real quick? Where are we in fire season? Fire season, they like to say it's all year round in California now, but where are we in fire season? Did we lose you?
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Oh,
there.
you're back now. You're back.
I'm
now.
back. I disappeared. That was a scary question. So we shouldn't be seeing massive fires like this, right? Obviously, if there's no rain, you can have some fires jump up, but to have the level of destruction that's happening right now in January is really just unheard of. But this fire season is extending longer and longer. In 2018 there was the Thomas fire near Santa Barbara, and this happened in December, and the fire itself devastating, but then there was some heavy rain that happened just a few weeks later, and there was just absolutely devastating and deadly mudslide that happened right afterward. And so I just got off the phone actually about an hour ago with a former Weather Service meteorologist. He worked down in Los Angeles for 20 years, and he was telling me, he's very concerned about what might lie ahead in the months to come with these burn scars that are backed up right to these populated areas when rain does arrive. Yeah. So fire season is extending, and then that increases the risk of these burn scars, which have their own hazards.
So Val, you a couple of things to say about Anthony. First of all, you can tell he's a newspaper reporter because he's on the phone with everybody.
Yes.
Okay. That's number one, and he's doing a great job, isn't he?
He is. He's doing a wonderful
Anthony,
job.
I appreciate. Anthony's not an old man. He's a young man.
Yeah.
But I said I want this guy on my show. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. No, I really look up to Jeff too. It was really great to meet you in Tahoe.
His elders. He looks up to his elders. That's right. He looks up to his elders.
He's funny.
Oh, he disappeared again.
Where you go?
What's going on?
We got a picture of you.
Oh, now I don't. Now you might want to lift your camera.
Now it's my stomach. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
Don't know what happened there. I'll just change the input, I guess.
I'm just glad you were wearing pants. Okay, I'm just glad you were wearing pants just now. So Val, I'm sure you have a question for Anthony.
We do. Let's. I've been watching our Facebook comments are blowing up, so I do have a couple of things that I wanted to run by you guys. Let's see what you think. David says, #Jeff, #Anthony. Climate can trigger a fire from heat, drought, temperature change, just like a match. Does this make sense? Does this sound right? He wants to know.
He wants to know if fires can spontaneously form, and I think the answer is definitely no to that.
No.
Okay.
So let me jump on that.
Yeah, sure.
In a lot of places in the country, you think about lightning that can trigger wildfires. Yeah. And we don't. California is a lightning desert. Basically, we see a very small fraction of the lightning that happens in Florida. It would be like a rare day for you guys to not see lightning in summertime. For us, it's a rare day if we see lightning. So, we have lightning starts, and those are really common in the forests. But in urban areas like this, the real issue is that, there's people everywhere. People are driving cars. People are throwing cigarettes out the window. There are power lines draped. Even in this video, you see a power line right there. And so what the state started to do at some of these power companies is de-energize these power lines in areas that are high risk for fires, because when the power lines do fall down in these 80 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts, then they don't start fires. But the problem with this Santa Ana wind event that just happened was that it was so widespread. As you mentioned, Jeff, you were shocked looking at the models and like the forecasts, just how strong that was going to be. So basically impossible to de-energize everywhere. And while we don't have a cause quite yet, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there were power lines that were failing and they were energized. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, not saying that's the cause right now, but there were sparks flying and videos posted all over the internet.
Yes, that's right. I saw that. Yes, yes. The wind was causing these power lines to essentially spark. And I did see that on there. I wasn't sure if it was the cause of the fires, and I think you're saying you're not sure either. Unfortunately, sometimes I think you get bad actors. And I don't mean LA like actors who are in the movies. I mean bad actors who would, actually throw a match just to create havoc. Hopefully that's not the case.
There are people are leaving comments saying that there's videos on TikTok going around of people lighting up matches and starting the fires, but obviously
you never know if it's true or not.
No, an investigation needs to be held. Okay, we have another question. It says, hashtag Jeff, do we have a total count of how many homes and acreage that we have lost so far in total of all 5 active fires? And how far is the smoke reaching?
Well, I can answer the acreage thing, Anthony, unless it's changed. It was like 28 or 29,000 acres for all the fires as of like an hour or two ago when I looked. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, each it's like 15,000 for the Palisades and then 10,000 for the Eaton, and they had each destroyed more than 1,000 structures, which puts them in the top 20 most destructive fires in California history, and they're now the 2 most destructive fires in Los Angeles County history.
That's crazy. I want to bring up a weather graphic here, so just give me a second, and let's talk a little bit more about what's happening. So first of all, you know what? Let me do this manually because this graphic.
There's a logo comment while you look for that graphic if you want. This is from Alyssa Dixon. She says, here in Northeast Florida, we've not gotten much rain at all for months either. Yeah. When a rain came, it was never more than 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and that was only a couple of times. The rest were just as dusty, and it was gone. We are so dry. I guess she.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of rain in Florida this summer, obviously, because of the tropical systems, but it's dried out ever since then. I want to bring this up to show what's happening, and there's 2 different graphics here, Anthony, because we're looking at the LA basin itself. This is right by LA, and the amount of hot, dry, windy days has increased by 3 days. The trend is very small since 1973. But if I forward this, now I go to like Palm Springs area, and the trend is 61. There's a large trend in most of California. I'm not exactly sure why the trend in hot, dry, windy days is a lot less in LA specific and a lot more in the rest of California. But you can clearly see the average is probably closer to 30 or 40 extra days that are considered hot, dry, windy days, which would be extreme fire weather days. But I did want to bring that graphic up, Anthony, to kind of talk about how things have changed in the past, because we're going to be talking a little bit about the future in a second or two, and also bring some of Daniel Swain's research into the mix as well.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 components, as you mentioned, hot, dry, windy. Well, we know for certain that the climate is warming up. I mean, that's apparent all over the country, particularly in the Southwest in summer and fall. Dry, well, we explained that, expanding atmospheric sponge phenomena as, things dry out, the vegetation dries out, and then it makes it very flammable. Wind is the component that is most uncertain. The frequency of Santa Ana events is very tricky to identify whether that has increased or decreased in the past, or whether it will do that in the future. Yeah. But, you increase 2 of those 3 factors, and there you go. Fire danger is increasing.
Right. All right. Let me bring up another graphic for you. So this is the one that's from John Abatzoglu. And once again, just if you're listening, it's from John Abatzoglu.
Yep.
Yeah. I like saying his name. I know, and John laughs that I like saying his name.
He tells us
you know what? Because I nail it. Okay. It's very hard to get his name right, but I nail it. Okay. And I'm very proud of myself. Okay. He's going to laugh when I send him this video. In any event, so he made this graphic, him and someone else. So I forget the name of the person, so I apologize. But these are the warming stripes that we talk about in climate, but they're not temperature. They are essentially dryness and wetness. And you could see how those thicker brown stripes have increased over the past 10 years or so. Notice how dry those stripes are over the past, since about 2013 or 14. We've seen one of the worst droughts in California history. In fact, in some measure, it was the worst drought in California history since 800 AD. So I just wanted to pull this graphic up to show how the climate is changing, Anthony, in California, because we've been talking about it. Now we can visually see what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's striking. I moved to California a year and a half ago, and I've been here only really during a wet regime, but the swings are quick now and they're extreme. So wouldn't be surprised if, we're already kind of seeing some drought signs in Southern California. Severe drought was just declared today by the U.S. Drought Monitor. We're fine here in Northern California, where the biggest reservoirs in the state are, but we have more than just hydrology that we talk about. We're talking about vegetation being super dry, the meteorological drought of there being no precipitation really so far this year. So yeah, the signs often start in one part of the state and then it spreads across. So we'll see what happens, but drought is something that we should always be talking about in California.
One of the things that gets me about this event is the fact that they were reporting hurricane force winds with gusts of up to over 100 mile per hour. I mean, is that unprecedented for this time of the year? How are they getting hurricane force winds?
Well, we showed a graphic before, and I guess I could bring it back up again to kind of show the Santa Ana winds. Santa Ana winds are common. I would say that this particular event is top 10%, right, Anthony, in terms of we don't often see widespread gusts 80, 90, 100 miles an hour or more. And also, you saw Kirkwood, California, in central northern California, which is on top of the Sierra Nevada, had a wind gust to 207 miles an hour.
Yeah, so these Santa Ana winds, again, they're common in fall and winter. And what made this one so unique was that it was occurring on top of just the dryness that happened, right? The Weather Service was warning of the strongest Santa Ana wind event in 14 years leading up to this event. It was very clear that there were going to be strong winds. Yeah. However, the last time this happened, there wasn't the major fire risk. Well, when you have next to no rain, exactly, and when you have next to no rain, there's a spark, which is basically a guarantee when there are hundreds of or tens of millions of people living in the LA area, right?
Yeah.
It just how people live, right?
Right.
Not saying it was arson or anything like that, but things happen and then the fire goes. It's just it's a recipe for disaster right there. Those strong winds basically tinder everywhere, and then houses and people. So
I want to bring this graphic up and then we can kind of be more freestyle. So this is from Daniel Swain, and it is a term that I think he coined many years ago, which is called weather whiplash. Now, it's very typical for California to have weather whiplash. They're a Mediterranean climate. They go from very wet to very dry from year to year. A lot of that's controlled by El Nino and La Niña, but weather whiplash seems to be getting worse because of climate change. So what he did was he modeled the future. So what's going to happen in the future? And on the left, you can see the modeled extreme dry seasons between 2070 and 2100. And you can see what's happening across most of California, and especially Southern California, where we see about a 2 times increase in very dry seasons in the future. So we're going to see about 2 times more on average across Southern California, very dry seasons. Then look on the right. At the same time, extreme wet seasons are also going to increase by 2 to 3 times in Southern California. Right? Think about that. So now, how is it possible you can get twice the amount of extreme dry seasons and twice the amount of extreme wet seasons? It almost doesn't make sense, but it's because weather whiplash is increasing. Your dry seasons are becoming drier and your wet seasons are becoming wetter. Now, Anthony, did I explain that correctly? Because I'm not as dug in as you are into the California weather, not reading Daniel Swain's research as much as you are. So did I explain that right, or am I off in my explanation?
I think we should go back to the whole balloon analogy from earlier, right? If it's going to be dry, well, you're increasing demand on the soils, right? It's dry, like the amount of precipitation falling, sure, it might decrease, but even if it does fall, it's so warm and it's demanding that this evaporation, right? So the weather patterns themselves, I think there's still some uncertainty of like how the weather patterns might change. But even if we expected the same patterns,
Right.
we would still expect the drought to increase because
Right.
we're just getting so much hotter.
Right. So it doesn't matter so much how much more or less precipitation you have, although that was specifically about weather whiplash, the
Sure.
change between really wet years and bad floods and really dry years and bad droughts and bad fires. But that's the main point I think that everyone needs to take home is that even if we were to see a little bit more precipitation in the future or a little bit less, it almost doesn't matter because as long as you continue to raise temperatures, you're continuing to increase the amount of moisture that's being pulled out of the soil. And regardless, even if you get that much more rain, it doesn't matter. It's more than compensated for by the extra moisture being pulled into the atmosphere and drying out the vegetation. Does that sound correct?
Entirely.
Okay. Val, I'm sure
I do
you
have a comment, yes, because somebody wrote, this is from Kelly Lang. She says, Val, I grew up and worked in the fire area. We always had Santa Ana winds. I now live less than an hour north of the active fires in Kern County. Am I saying that right, Kern?
Yep.
Many of my friends, clients, and family have lost property. Well, our hearts are with you guys, Kelly. Kelly Lang just sharing her testimony, I guess. And she says the winds in the air, flight restrictions due to president being here, limited water drop access for a time.
The president was in Southern California for a time yesterday, I think it was, right?
Okay.
I don't know if he's still there.
She also says there were comments, some people saying that the water was shut off, and local people that live in California were saying, no, that's because the electricity had to be shut down, and maybe that had something to do with the water supply. I don't know if you know anything about this, Anthony.
Yeah, there's a lot of specifics there that we've been covering with our work. So if you read sfchronicle.com, we've been covering all of this in our live blog. I've been primarily focused on the weather. And so there's been a lot of rumors out there and such that we're attempting to debunk with that. So please check our work online.
Okay, well, listen, I think we're about out of time. Anthony, you have work to do. We also have to get back to our day job of doing the weather forecasting here in Florida. But, I really wanted to cover this topic because this is truly a historic event and a life-changing event, just like a hurricane is for us here in the Tampa Bay area. This is what's happening in parts of LA right now. And we're going to be, unfortunately, we are already seeing a lot more of these really large fires burning a lot more acreage and doing it a lot faster, spreading faster than they used to. And this is not going to go away until we start controlling the amount of heating that we are causing due to the burning of fossil fuels mostly here. And so we're just likely to continue to see this. And as long as people are living in harm's way, and there's a lot of people living in California, unfortunately, I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon.
No. Yeah, let me say one final thing. So Tampa was hit by hurricanes within a 2-week span.
Yeah, 2 or 3
this
weeks.
fall. 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks of just devastating hurricanes. Well, California and LA, we just had the 2 most destructive wildfires in recorded history occur on the same day. So we were seeing extremes around the country. The past year of weather has been, this is not normal weather that is happening. This is being caused. It's been contributed by the fact that we're changing our atmosphere, and we pump heat into the atmosphere that causes the weather patterns to change in response. You're not going to expect the same things that you've been seeing in the past. So to have 2 hurricanes in 3 weeks, 2 destructive fires on the same day, I mean, there's a lot of crazy things happening. So hopefully people are thinking about this right now.
And I don't want to, this is opening up Pandora's box, but obviously a lot of people's, their insurance was dropped on them this past year or these past years. People are having a hard time getting insurance because the insurance companies know that these fires are unstoppable and there's a good chance their house may be burned down and they don't want the exposure. We're seeing a similar thing here in Florida, not due obviously to fires, but due to hurricanes and flooding. This insurance crisis, I think, is going to be one of the most prominent impacts that everyday people notice when it comes to the climate crisis.
I think we're already seeing it. We're already noticing it. I mean, there's
an
increase. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We have an incredible insurance reporter. I'd like to shout out Megan Muntz at the Chronicle. If you go to sfchronicle.com/home-insurance, we're leading in insurance reporting, newspaper in California or really across the country, reporting on the State Farm crisis, all these other insurance agencies dropping people. It's a huge problem that we hear about every single day in California. And please check out our work. Megan does fantastic stuff, so I want to shout her out.
All right, great. Listen, Anthony, I want to thank you. Val, of course, I want to thank you. I want to do a plug to our article on our website right now, WFLA.com. Go to WFLA.com, click the weather tab, then click Climate Classroom, and there's not a tremendous amount of information, but you can have a direct link to Anthony's webpage as well there, and I'll be adding some more content to it as well to kind of round out our coverage as well. But anyway, thank you, Anthony, for joining me. I will likely see you in just a couple of weeks from now. I want you to turn the snow machine on if you can.
I will do so.
That would be great. And Val, of course, thank you as usual for helping us out with this episode.
Thank you, Val. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Of course, our pleasure, and thank you again for joining us, everybody at home. Again, you can watch our shows on WFLA.com, on WFLA's Facebook page. You can also watch them on YouTube. We're going to package this up. We're going to send it to YouTube. In addition, it's now on our OTT platform, and also as podcasts on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts as well. So thank you for joining me and my group this week, and we'll see you again next week for Climate Classroom.
Watch or listen to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by Armor View Window and Door on WFLA social media platforms, and find Jeff's climate reports on WFLA.com.